Perfect. Okay. Okay, so let me get set up here real quick. Hey, Cooper. Okay. Okay, so all right, so here's our front end at the moment. And we've got these two modules and then we've got our game, and then we can do done playing, then we go back, or we go to the next page, and then we still have this error happening. But so right now, these two modules, the data for the modules in terms of what this card should display in this image, and then like the pages and where the iframe should come from and all of that's hard coded on the front end. So if we look at the code for where that's coming from, we have like a sample data file, and we've just sort of hard coded the data to use for that. So that's not very easy to update, and if we wanted to like add a new module, it would require us to make a code change to this file, and then like we'd have to release a new version of the front end for everybody to get that change. And if you think about like a blog post, like you can think of these modules really almost as like blog posts. Like they're probably not adding new modules at the frequency you would release new blog posts, but it's kind of on the same order of magnitude. And if you think about any blog that you read, like you're not getting a new version of the front end every time they release a new blog post. They're updating a database or something like that, and that's like immediately releasing it to everybody just by having that data added to the back end, and then your front end receiving that data from the back end. So one thing we'll want to do with the back end is basically host our content there in terms of what should be displayed on the front end. And the front end will basically ask, like, give me all the data for what should be displayed on the front end. So that's one thing the backend will do. The other is if you need the website to be different depending on who is logged in. So if you actually want to track like any sort of specialized thing specific to a person, in terms of their progress and where they've left off and things like that, then you also need the backend to do that for you. So we would add a notion of logging in and then knowing who a particular person is, and then storing in our backend where they like basically where they left off and kind of their progress throughout the web app. So that's for our specific use case, that's what our backend can provide. Any questions about that?
That makes sense.
Cool. So I think what we should do is probably just start adding. I think like one of the first steps that makes sense is to move the hard coded module data to be something that we store in the backend. And then maybe that's the main thing we do today. And then next class, we can add authorize like logging in and authorization and stuff like that. And also storing progress in terms of like where you left off. We can probably get all that done in the next class. Okay, so yeah, let's dive into just starting to do that. Okay, so whenever we run this application from, so we've got Atlas, we've got the client folder and the server folder. We've been doing everything so far in the client folder. And whenever we do npm run start, it's probably pretty small. We've been running both the front end and the back end together. So there's like the clients running, listening at localhost 3000, which is giving us this here, this front end React app. But then also there is a server process running as well. And that is listening on port 5001. So if we go and hit port that localhost 5001, then you'll see we're getting like a default, like that root route is responding with JSON. So it's just giving us a message, hello from OK Coders. We can kind of dig into, sorry, it's if someone's messaging on.
No, that was me. I was just joking.
Okay, cool. So if we look at what's happening for that, we can go to our VS Code for the project, look at the server folder, and then so there's a server folder, and then within that, there's another server folder that has our index.js, which you don't really need to look at this typically, and then go to app.js, and this is kind of where everything kind of gets hooked up. And then you can see we kind of have a root router here, which is responding when I just go to the root route. So localhost 5001 with no additional routing on it is the root route. So we can go to the root router and see if we do a GET request at the root route, we're just getting back this, response.json message, hello world from OK Coders. So this right here is what is making it so that we get this response here. So message, hello world from OK Coders is what's making that happen. So one thing we can do just really quick is move this sample data. So notice, so here's the sample data that we've got hard coded on the front end. We can just go ahead and move this sample data to exist on our backend as a first step, and then just kind of get that hooked up. And then what we can do is move this sample data on the backend to be in our database as a kind of a second step. So I think we should make this a little bit bigger. Can't see this okay? Say yeah, because I can't like see faces when I'm sharing my screen.
I can see it.
Okay, cool. All right, so I think we probably want I think we can just eventually we can kind of split up our routing, but for now we can just kind of do everything in the root route just to get something going. So I think we can have maybe a new router.get that's like slash modules or something like that. So I went, hey, give me all the modules that I should be displaying. And that will be, I'm going to copy this sample data. And I'm just gonna stick it in this file for now. And so instead of responding with message, we may say like modules, and then give back the sample data. So basically what I'm doing here is like I'm controlling the back end, and I'm going to control the front end. So I can kind of decide, you know, how I want to send the data, and like what, like do I want to send an object, and then like what keys do I want to use? And so this is saying, hey, I'm going to respond with something that is an object that has a key called modules. Okay. And then that value at that key is just going to be all this sample data here, which is this array of objects. So if I save this and go to localhost 5001/modules, what we'll get back is this sample data. So I've got that running. I just need to check and see if I have any errors. I don't. And so if I do localhost 5001/modules now, I'm going to get a different response, which is, you know, this key of modules and then my array of data. So I can kind of copy this and put it in this JSON formatter thing, paste it, process it, and see, okay, I'm getting, if I get like a JSON response back from a website, I often put it in this thing. You can also get like a extension that'll automatically parse it for you in this tab. But anyways, so this is kind of printing it out for me. So we can see, okay, we're getting back an object. It has one key, which is modules. And then in that key is an array of objects. And so we've got just two modules right now. And so here's the first one. It's got the image URL, the title, the description, the ID, and the pages for it. So that was the data we were hard coding on the front end before. Now it's hard coded on the back end. and then we can kind of get the back end and front end talking to each other. And then we'll, instead of hard coding the data on the back end, we'll move it to the database. But it's good to just kind of take, you know, go step by step here. So now that the data is on the back end, we can kind of delete it from the front end. So I'm going to delete sample data.js. You know what? I probably need to pull, make sure I'm up to date real quick. Okay. I was actually behind. So I wonder if there was some stuff that you guys had done that didn't have potentially. Huh.
I tried to submit something right before class to make the entire card like clickable instead of just the button.
I think you need to go to /modules. I made an update to fix the layout because we're using the create browser router component thing. And so I had to make it wrapped with this layout components. Like these are like the children of it, but I made we need like a redirect from the home to the modules. Just
I
kind
got
of
you. Yeah,
future
gotcha.
building.
Okay. Cool. All right, so yeah, I do want to delete that. Okay, so I deleted that sample data JS. So now that that's deleted, the front end is going to be broken because something's trying to import from that right now. So module list and module detail page both import from that. So we'll go to module list. So you can see module list here maps over our sample data. And that is imported from sample data, which is deleted now. So this module list component needs to query the backend. Okay. So does anybody remember how to do that? Like there's a function we use that's built into the browser that lets us send a query to like a backend. Does anybody remember what it's called? It starts with F. Or does anybody know like what the what'd you say that again?
Is it fetch?
Yes. Yeah. So we use fetch to send what's called an AJAX request. So I'm going to make a function that will be called get modules, and this will be an async function. Okay, and then I use fetch, so I'm going to say fetch, and the URL for now we'll just hard code it here. Will be localhost 5001/modules. The localhost 5001 modules is the URL that we used here that's giving us back this JSON data. Okay. So we fetch to that URL from our front end. This is going to send that request to this URL. So that's this here. And the syntax for this is like fetch. And then actually I have to look this up.
Is it like fetch and then dot then or something?
Yeah. And then you do like .json or okay, cool. So remember there's a few ways you can use so fetch returns a promise because it's asynchronous. And then there's two ways you can work with promises. You can do that. You can do .then. You can also, if you are doing it inside an async function, you can do await. So you'll see both examples potentially. So like this one is doing it with await, which is what I'll do. But if you like just like look at other examples, you'll probably see both. So if we go to this one, you can see that them in their example they do .then. So both of these styles will work. Typically, a lot of people will prefer doing async await if they can. It's just a little bit cleaner, but it's the same thing. So we do const response equals await fetch, and then we'll do const data equals await response.json like this. And then I'm just going to console log the data, and then I'm going to return the data. So anyways, that we're not quite done with this, but I just want to make sure it's working. And to make sure it's working, I actually have to call this function. So remember in React, if we are doing something asynchronously, so with fetch, here we are, there's like specific things in React provided to us to be able to make those things work. Because like the component's going to render, and then it's not going to have the data, and then we're going to need to update that data and do so, and then so like based off that data changing, it'll re-render for us. And do you guys remember like the different functions provided by React that we need to use for stuff like this? Hi, Cooper. It's a hook. Do you guys remember there's like two main hooks that we use that React provided? They start the name use.
Like use state.
And use effect.
Yes, those are the two we need. So we need state because we're going to need something that holds the data we get back from the API, and it starts off where we don't have it, and then we need to update it to give it the data that we received. So we need to use state for that. So we'll do const modules, probably is the right name, or modules data or something like that, but I'll just start with modules. So modules, and then update modules. You can also do like set modules. See people do both, but you're choosing these names, and then you do use state, and you kind of decide what you want the starting value to be. You can do like undefined. You can do like an empty object. It probably makes sense to do empty object here, just because it's like eventually it's going to be an object that has that module's key in it, and so it might make the code a little bit cleaner just to have it be an empty object. You could do it with undefined as well. So this is going to be where we're going to eventually put the data we get back from the API, and then to actually get the data, we need to call this get modules function, and we do that inside a use effect call. So we'll do use effect, and we will do how do I want to do this? Because you can't do, yeah. Okay, yeah, I think I want to call, I think I want to do update modules and give it data. And just call this function. And then okay, so I want to use effect, but I only want to call it one time whenever the page loads. And so we do this empty array thing. So the way this is kind of funky, you'll just remember that this is what you do whenever you need to get data. You'll set state with where you're going to put the data that you need to get. You'll make a function that gets that data and then updates the state with the data. So I'm saying, get the data and then update state. Here's the data, and then you do a use effect that calls that function. So basically, this is saying, here's where I want to store the data. Here's how to get the data, and then here's the function that actually runs that on page load is what this is saying. So once the page loads, go make that request and update the data. So we'll have at some point modules will have the data in it. And so instead of using sample data, because we deleted that, we want to use modules. And then remember, modules is just like the whole object for the data we get back from the API. And so we actually need to reference the key, which is modules. So I have to say modules. And then that's going to be mapping over the data, the two modules we have. So that array of modules. But remember, at the start of this, whenever we first render this page, it's going to be an empty object, which doesn't have any data in it, because it has to make that request asynchronously and get the data. So we need to like handle that being empty first. So we call this function down here. And so we just need sort of like a loading state, or just something that checks to see if that's not there and doesn't try to map over the data until it's present. So we can do that inside here. So we can say like if modules module, like, so like if not modules.module, so if it's like faulty, in return, you can do like a spinner or something like that. For now, I'm just going to do like a div with loading. So if we don't have modules, then return. Sorry, the sirens are going off. There's going to be some howling about to start. So if we don't have the modules, return loading. But if we do, then map over them. So this return here. I'm usually at OK Coders when this happens. Like I missed this. Okay, so let me delete this import, and then I'm getting an error on the detail page. So let me just fix that real quick. Okay. Okay, so right now we're just getting like the loading thing here. So something's wrong. So let's open up the console to see what's happening. So I was saying something about failing to fetch. Localhost is not supported. So what I did wrong here is, does anybody know? Like, so it's like, hey, this isn't like, I don't understand what URL you're trying to talk to here. It's saying, go ahead.
Sorry, is it because you're missing an HTTPS?
Yes. So https://localhost. So it's saying, hey, I don't know how to talk localhost. I know how to talk HTTP though. So yeah, you need that at the beginning. Oh, and it's not HTTPS. It's just HTTP. Whenever you're running something locally, it's usually not HTTPS because you don't have like a secure server running. But when you deploy it, that'll get kind of taken care of for you. Okay. Now it's complaining about cores for some reason. Which I thought we set that up and we didn't. So that's something we just need to set up on the server. Yeah, I guess I don't have that in here. So for that, you just do, you just go to the server. You do npmi cores. And then you do, here you do app.use cores or something like that. Let me look this up. Yeah, okay. So I do app.use cores like that, and then I just need to import cores from cores. Okay. And we'll refresh. Okay, look at that. Okay, so notice like we had loading for like a hot second there, and then it and then it now has these modules just like we did before, but it's not hard coded anymore. Like if we look at the network tab, you can see we're querying for modules. So we can click this and see, okay, yeah, so the browser is sending a GET request to localhost 5001. And if you go to preview, you can see the response it's getting. And you can see, oh, it's like it's an object with the modules key. It's got an array of objects. And then within there, we've got our modules. So description, image URL, module ID, pages. So yeah, this is, yeah, so we just hooked up. Hey, we have a backend now, and it's giving data to the front end. And the front end is since we all have the same schema as our sample data that we had hard coded, everything just continues to work. Now, there is one thing that's not going to work is if we go to the detail page, we were also pulling the data for the module from the sample data on the detail page, so we need to hook that up as well. Now, the behavior here, though, is typically if you go to a detail page, so like it's a very common pattern you'll see of like there's a page that lists a bunch of stuff, and then you would click on an individual item and it would take you to the detail page. So like you're looking at one thing, and typically the URL for that is going to be like an ID up here that identifies the specific thing you're looking at. And then whenever you go to that page, the front end will like grab the ID from the URL and then make a query to the backend saying, hey, give me the data for this specific item, the ID for it. And then it'll give you that specific item. That's kind of a pretty common pattern that you'll see. And so we need to do that. But right now, our backend only supports sending everything. So we've got, we have two routes right now. One that is just this hard-coded message, and then our modules route that's just sending back all the sample data. So we don't have a detail page route currently, so we would need to add that. So the way that would look if we don't have a database yet, we don't actually have IDs here. Oh yeah, no, we do. We have module ID here. Okay, cool. Usually those, if they're coming from the database, the ID is going to be like a, like a big goobly gop thing of text. But these will work for now before we move to a database. So what we would do for this is add a new route, and you would be /modules/ an ID, and the ID is going to be supplied by the front end to us. And so we do the wildcard match thing here to say like, hey, this is a parameter that we're going to get. And it's going to change. So it'll be modules/some ID. And you can, with Express, you can like pull the ID out of the request. So that looks like we'll do const ID equals request.params .id. So since we put this in this for the URL, it means that there's going to be a parameter now that is called whatever we put here. So we can pull that out down here. And then instead of sending all the sample data, we'll say, you know, const module equals sample data.find. And then there's only two here, but imagine there's a bunch. Like we're going to loop through the array of modules and try to find the one module that has the ID that we're interested in looking at. So we use the find method for that to filter the array to just one item. And so we'll say find, and then it'll be module. And we do, you know, m.module ID triple equals the ID from the route param. So just like that. And so we hopefully find one. You typically need to do like error handling and stuff in case they like give us an ID that doesn't match something. But we're just trying to get a prototype here working, and so we can kind of skip all the like stuff you would need to do to get a more robust system. And so we'll return that found item. We'll just do module, and then instead of putting that, well, actually, so we can sort of decide how we want to do the shape of the data. In this case, if they're just asking for one thing, we can just give them that one thing. So we'll just, the response, like for all the modules, we did like an object that had the modules key and then the array. We could have just sent back an array. It's up to us. And so for this one, I just want to send back the object and the data for that module without like wrapping it in some other thing. And so I'm just going to change this to actually just literally be response.json modules. I'm just going to pass them the module back instead of kind of wrapping it in a parent object. So this is a new route defined that we can use. So and it'll look for a module based off the ID we pass and give us back that module. So we can kind of test this before hooking it up if we want to. And so there's localhost 5001 modules, and then we can do / and then we can pass an ID. So public is one of those IDs. So I'll do module / public, and man, it broke. So we'll look at what happened. So saying something about sample is not defined. Oh. Yeah, sample. It should be sample data. I don't know why I'm not getting errors in my VS Code. So weird. Okay. And then I'm getting nothing. I don't know what this is. Oh, this isn't returning. I think it was just returning undefined. Yeah, okay, there we go. It was working. It was just returning undefined. So we just weren't saying anything.
Did you change anything on the code when it was just returning that white page? Did you add something to that?
Yeah, I added this return here
Oh, okay.
because I was doing a rocket function, but I did like a multi-line one with brackets, and so you have to explicitly return in this type here. Like if I had just done this, like in this style, this rocket functions arrow function style, if it's one line, it'll implicitly return for you the value here. But if you do a multi-line one where you wrap it in brackets, it becomes more like the standard function style. Like if you do, declare a function with the keyword function, with those you have to return. Like you have to put return this thing. And so like I wasn't returning anything. And so basically module was just undefined. And I was doing response.json undefined, basically. And so there's just nothing. It was just sending nothing, basically. So I was getting a response, but it just had no data. Yeah, so now we're getting an object here for the module. So we're getting the public module. Here's the data for it. And then if I put like something that doesn't exist, like if I put like an ID that doesn't exist, then we're back to getting nothing. So we're just getting undefined back from the backend, which is probably not what you want to do. You'd probably want to give like a 404 response kind of thing, which we can do. I mean, actually, so it's not that hard to do it. So we'll do, if not module, then we do response dot JSON. We can say like we can do dot status. Or 4, I think. Yeah. So if you're doing stuff from the browser, it's kind of hard to know what the status code is when you're doing it directly like this. So people often use Postman for that. It's an application you can install. And so I can okay, great, thank you. Okay, go away. Okay, so I can do, oh my God. Okay. So this is like a thing that'll let me do requests. So I can do the same request here and send it. And yeah, okay. So you can see here's the response. This is kind of, you can kind of decide how you want to handle errors because again, like when you're doing the backend and the front end, you as long as you coordinate what you do. Like, so if you set a certain pattern on the back end, then you just have to follow that pattern on the front end. So like you get to choose the shape of the data you want to send back, as long as, because you're then going to code the front end to expect that shape. And so like I also can decide, hey, I want to do errors this way. So like if there's an error that happens, I'm going to give them an object that has a message property that tells them what went wrong. And then your front end just needs to know that, hey, if there's an error, I'm going to, instead of getting data, I'm going to get something that's got a message, and I can display that message if I want to in like a error notification or toast or something like that. So that's what I did here. So if it's not found, I'm going to give back an object that says message, not found. Oh, it's giving us 200. Okay, though. Shouldn't be doing that. I think maybe if I do .json, maybe I have. Oh, I
Try
status first.
response.status and then do response.send after that one in like a separate line. I think that is how we normally did it.
But how do I?
Or maybe response.status code or something like that.
But can I? If I do send, isn't it gonna be text instead of JSON?
So so do it in a separate line before is what it looks like. So just do like response.status code equals whatever, and then you can do your response.json. I think it gets tacked on. I think that's what Stack Overflow is telling me.
Okay, it worked with me just switching the order.
Yeah.
Just now. I don't. Where did it show me that? Like I had like hovered over something. Yeah, it's giving me examples here. So yeah, so when I hovered over this JSON, it kind of showed me how to do that here. Okay, so
Send oh no's.
oh, so if I do .json, that isn't it just going to be a string?
What if you did kept our response.status and then the 404, and instead of JSON you did .send, and then in parentheses you put the not found string?
Yeah, so if you do that, there's nothing wrong with this. So we're gonna get 404 status 404, and then you're just get the string not found. And so if you look at the content type here, it's text. That's another thing that happens for you is like there's like headers that'll just say like here's the response status, and then here's the type of body I'm giving you. It's like text. And so the body here is text not found, and you could use this still, like, so you could just coordinate with your front end. I'll give you JSON responses when it's successful, and if it's unsuccessful, I'm just going to give you a raw text response message and just use that message in the front end as well. So this is perfectly fine. It's just kind of whatever you want to do, because you may end up to do like more. You may like often see people end up doing JSON because they may want to do like multiple things. So like in this format here, if I do this one instead of this one, I could do like message not found, and then like verbose message or something like that. Just like more details potentially. Like I could do like module with ID ID not found, and like you may want one message that you're going to use to what I do. It's not going to work, is it? Okay, so yeah, so like I still get a 404 not found, but then I get this object like message and then verbose message. And like you may want like the verbose message for your logging or something like that, but then like you may want to show the smaller one to the client, like what you actually display to the user. So like there's just it's just kind of what this is kind of what you want to end up doing. But yeah, this is totally fine as well. Just doing this. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, this is more proper what you would do normally in a production environment is, you know, if you like give a 404 if it's not found, and if like actually have success and error handling. So if we do find it, then so public. So if we actually find a module, if we give them an actual ID, then we'll get back that object here. Okay, so that means on our front end, on our detail page, remember we were pulling the module. So this is now front end code, right? So before on our module detail page, we were pulling the module ID from the URL parameter. So this is the client URL. So on the client, we have the parameter for the module ID, and we need to pull that from the URL, and then we need to put that in the URL that we're going to send to the backend. So there's like front end URLs and then backend URLs, and often they kind of sort of mirror each other in certain ways. And that like the ID on the front end is the ID you're going to send to the backend. So we have the module ID pulling from the URL, and then now we just need to kind of follow that same pattern for fetching to the backend. So we had on our module list, we had state, and we had a function to talk to the backend, and then we had a use effect to send that. And we need to do the same thing on the detail page as well. So we've got the module ID, and then we need to add, I'm just going to copy this and modify it. I'll paste this here. So instead of modules, we'll have, we were using something called module data before, so I'll just use that same name. So module data, and then update module data. Starts off as an empty object. That's fine as well. And then we're going to do get module. So we're just getting one module. So I'm going to rename that function. And then instead of localhost 5001/modules, it'll be localhost 5001/modules / the ID that we want. So I'm going to put the module ID that's up here that we're pulling from the URL. So use params is a React router function that is able to pull the parameters from the URL for us. So I'm going to do module ID. And then we'll do update module data with that data. And then we'll have a use effect that runs that calls that function. And then we just need to delete this module data that we had before, because we've now replaced it with this piece of state. Okay, so this looks good to me. The only thing missing is we need to have like a loading state as well if it's not defined. So we would do, actually, honestly, because like an empty object is truthy. So we could, and like we already had something that was doing module not found that was just doing, if not module data. So we could have it start off as undefined instead of an empty object. And this stuff will work because it'll start off as undefined, and this thing will go, oh, module data is undefined, so this is falsy. So then let's show module not found, and then once our AJAX request finished, it'll turn module data into that object, which will be truthy, and then it'll render the page for us. So I think that should be okay. We're getting an error. Okay, I pasted this code, but I didn't update the imports. So we had use state, but we didn't have use effect. So I just need to import use effect from React. And then we'll take a peek at our page. And so we're on a module detail page. So the front end URL is modules / and then module ID is public. And it is pulling that from the URL and then doing our fetch. So if we look at our network tab, and just refresh this page, you can see that we've got the request to public. So localhost 5001/module/public. So this is the request to our backend, and then the response is just the object with that data. So that's good. And we can see it's kind of working as it did before. Okay, any questions about that so far?
Nope.
Okay. How are you guys on time?
I'm good.
Okay.
Same.
Okay. All right. So the only thing about this that we talked about changing now is instead of the sample data being hard coded on the back end, we want it to come from a database, right? So yeah, we just need to add we need to basically add a definition of what this data will look like in the database, and then insert these records into whatever database we use, and then hook up these methods to, instead of pulling from sample data, query our database. So let's look at the database stuff we have. Okay, so we just have a connected database, and it's talking to a localhost database currently. So let me just see if I have one running. Okay, I do have a local database running. And we would just need to add a model definition for our modules. So what I'll do is go to Mongoose documentation. And they have a, well, let's go to quick start real quick. Okay. All right, so they show making a schema here with just one property. Okay. All right. And then here's one that's got a little bit more to it. So I'll copy this. Actually, I'll copy this whole thing. Okay, so we've got this database file that's doing this connected database function. I think this is being called by, yeah, so our app.js is calling that function for us to connect to the database. So that's already set up for us. So we just need to add, we'll do a new file that defines a new collection. So we want to make a new collection in our database that's going to store our modules. So I will do a new file, and then I'll just call this modules.js. And then I'm going to paste that code that I copied. So we've got an import mongoose from mongoose, and then we've got, they're just pulling out this schema thing from that import that they use to define a schema. And then I'm going to pull up our main route that has our sample data so I can reference it. So basically we want to just, so like the shape of our data here, we need to model over here in this schema. So I will delete a few of these. So first thing we see here is an image. URL, and that is a string. So image URL is just a string. We have something that's called a title that is a string, so that will work. Then we have a description. And then we've got, so we won't need a module ID anymore because when we use Mongo, it will automatically generate the IDs for us whenever we add documents. So Mongo is going to provide something called underscore ID for us. And so we don't need to, we don't need this module ID anymore. We'll have to change our code to reference underscore ID instead of module ID. That'll be pretty quick and easy to do. And then we've got this embedded pages thing. So for that, oh, they actually give you an example with comments here. So this pages thing is an array of objects. And notice for the example schema they gave us, they provided one that's like that. So there's a notion of comments that is array of objects. So it's saying, hey, there's this thing called comments. You can have multiple of them on a blog, and there's a body property and a date property. So for us, we have, instead of comments, we have pages, right? It's an array. And then we have embed URL and embed type. So I'll change this from body to embed URL, which is a string, and then embed type, which is also a string. Okay. We then have an, oh, I think that's it. Okay. Okay, so we have image URL, title, description, and pages. Okay. And so instead of calling this blog schema, this would be called module schema. Let's see. Let's go back to their quick start. So they had done okay, so yeah, you define the schema, and then we need to make this, we need to tell it to, this essentially says make a collection in the database. So I'll copy this. So we got the schema, and then we actually, so that's just defining what it's going to look like, and then we actually need to make it. And so we're going to actually export this so that we can use it inside our routes. And so we'll call this module, and then we'll do mongo model module, and this is the module schema. So this is just what you have to do to you define what it's going to look like, and then you're actually saying make that thing in the database, and then you're exposing to the rest of your application this thing called module. That might be a reserved keyword, actually. Maybe not. But this is the thing we'll use to actually put data into the database and get data out of it. So this is the thing that we're going to reference when we want to query and update and delete modules. So save that. And then what we can do is go to this root here, and whenever we hit the, so this is where we have our two routes to get modules. So whenever we query modules, instead of pulling from sample data, we're going to want to pull from the database. And so we'll do module Should I call it modules? I think I want to call it modules. This isn't a big deal, but I'm going to call it modules. And so I'll do modules.find. And I think it imported that for me. Yep. So it imported that for me automatically. And so find, if we're looking at the documentation, you can see like, so they made the kitten thing, which is I called modules. And then here the example where they showed you how to make a new one. So add a new kitten to their collection, or for us, add a new module to the modules collection. That's how you do it here. And then if you actually want to query for them, they show you how to do that down here. You use the find method. And find, if you don't give it anything, it means just give me everything. So find everything in there. So give me all the modules. So notice that just like querying from the front end, a backend server, that's asynchronous. Querying from a backend server, a database, is also asynchronous. So we have to await that. So I'm going to make this an async function so I can use await. And so I'll do const modules equals await module.find. I'm just going to console log this for now. And we're still going to respond with the sample data at this moment, and just see what we're getting here, make sure it's working. Now, we don't have anything in the database yet, and so it's going to be an empty array. But let's just see if we're actually getting an empty array. So if I go ahead and query modules here, we can look at our backend and see that it logged an empty array right here. And so that appears to be working. And so let's go ahead, instead of sending the sample data, let's send back the modules. Okay. I'll stop console logging it. So now whenever you hit the route modules, we say, hey, query the database for all the modules and then send that back. And remember, this is kind of shorthand syntactical sugar to say, hey, make an object with a key called modules with the data coming from that modules constant. Because like the variable that has my data is the same name of the key I want to use. And so this is kind of just like a nice syntax for not having to do this key and value. If it's the same, if the key and the value are the same name, then you can do a shorter syntax for that. Okay, so now if we go to our and query this, should be getting this. Yeah, so we're getting an empty array now. And so all we would need to do is add a record to the database to get it to work. So I'll add add a record. So I'm using this compass to connect to our database. There's a modules collection here that Mongo created for us, but it's empty. There's no data in it. So I can do add data. And we just need, if we copy our sample data for now, we would just put this in. And we need to, it needs to be JSON, I think. And we don't have a module ID. Make this bigger. What are you mad about? What did I do wrong? There we go. Okay. Okay, so this is JSON that is like this. It's the same as our sample data, and it is in the format of the schema that we specified. So I'll insert this and notice like now it's in the database and it has an ID. So Mongo took care of adding an ID for me. So here's that property. So now that we're using ID instead of module ID, I do need to change the code that references module ID. And what I'll do if I have like a refactor like that is I'll do Shift Command F, which opens this search thing here. So I'll go there and then I'll just search module ID. And then I'm going to change all these references. So I can actually do it quickly with VS Code. So I want this instead of module ID to say, well, some of these things I want to say module ID. Well, on the front end, it's okay to call it module ID. But on our back end, that's where we want to change it. So yeah, actually, we only need to change it here, but we haven't refactored this method to use Mongo. Let's go ahead and do that. So okay, we just need to say so instead of using sample data.find, we're gonna do await modules, and then Mongo provides a find by ID method. So we'll do .find by ID, and then you just pass it the ID that you want, and then it knows to find the document in the database that has the underscore ID that you're specifying. And then I guess I need to. There is, yeah, okay, yeah, this is where I need to change. Yeah, this should be underscore ID. Okay. Okay, I think I got rid of all my sample data references. But I'm going to keep it for a second because I haven't added this other one to the database. Okay, let's see what's happening here. So I'll refresh this. Okay, all right, so yeah, that worked. So if we look at this, we're getting modules. We only added one to the database, but we can see it here. And notice instead of module ID, we have underscore ID coming from the database. and there's your little gobbledygook. But everything else is the same. And so that means the front end should still be working just fine. Well, this page shouldn't be working actually. Yeah, see, this is not found because now we're not using module ID, we're using the database ID, and so there is no database ID of public. But if we go back to modules, oh no, we have an error. Our database crashed. Okay. Oh, our database crashed. Uh, yeah, because we sent that query and it got mad. And yeah, I think we just need to restart it. Yeah. All right, so now it's working again, but we just have this one module. And then if we click on start learning, yeah. So notice now up here where the database ID is in the URL instead of the module ID that we had kind of hard coded. So yeah, everything's hooked up and using the database now. So what we would do from here is like, so we're only pulling data from the database. We're not adding anything to the database. So we would add like once we add the ability to log in and stuff like that, we could like based off who is logged in, we could if they're like an admin or something, we could show them a create new module page that would let them like type in the image URL and the title and the description and the pages and stuff, and then like submit it to the database. And so our server would get that request to add something to the database and then like add it to the database. So that's yeah. So for next week, what we can do is hook up logging in and stuff, add routes that will track your progress. So we'd have like new collections that would be like for a user that has like their what they've read and everything like that. And then also add routes for adding new modules. And I think that would be pretty much all the kind of features we had talked about. So
Quick question. So like they can submit like they can submit something into the database, but let's say they want to remove a module or like change it. How would they do that?
yeah, so if they want to delete one, you would also just see like, are they a admin or whatever, and would they be allowed to? And then you would just need to then like add some sort of button that only they would see that's like a trash can or something, like a delete button, right? And then you would call, and then you would just need to add a route that like gives them that ability. So you would just add a new backend route, and like remember there's like get, post. Do you remember the other types of requests?
There's like two other ones, and it's slipping my mind.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So the other ones are put and delete. And so put is a update request. So for an update, it's just simply like whenever you're doing a post request, you don't have an ID because this doesn't exist in the database yet. But for an update request, you're wanting to update something that is in the database. So a simple way is just to say, if the new data that you want this to be. So it's similar to how you would create a new one. You like specify all the data you want for it. So in an update, you like give all the data you want it to be now, and then but you also just supply the ID. And so instead of like add a record to the database, there's a method that Mongoose provides called Find by ID and Update. And so it's like the new data that you want it to be. And so it'll update that record in the database. And then if you want to delete, you just need the ID for what you want to delete. And so there's a method in Mongoose called Find by ID and Delete. And so you just have, it's just adding new routes that provide that functionality to the, so that the front end can then call that route.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? I know that was kind of fast, but did it make some sense? What we were
It
doing?
makes sense, but I think I'm gonna probably have to go back and rewatch some of it a little
Okay.
bit. But that's okay.
Yeah, I will push the code now, and I'll let you know when the recording's done or up.
Okay.
And then-
Could I ask you a quick question real quick on the thing that I tried to push earlier before class?
Mhm.
So I was trying to do like make the entire card clickable,
Mhm.
and on MUI it said to add the card action area component and then import that, from MUI too. But to not, so in our current card layout, we have card action, which has the button in it. And so then on their document thing on their website, the action area, the card action area is supposed to be above that, but it didn't work once I did it. The only difference that I see, like on the document, on their document thing on the website, is that our export default, like the actual function of that, is different than what we have. Is that what the issue would be? So like ours just says export function module card, but then their document says export default function and then multi-action area card.
Are you talking about this? Or are you talking about something up here?
I can't see it.
Oh, great. Like, are you talking about this part here or the
Yeah.
import part?
So on MUI's website, I had to import, so we have card and card actions, but then they said to make the entire thing clickable, we need to import card action area.
Okay.
Um,
Where did you see that?
on like the actual card, so the demo, go to the card demo. On that card API one, you can do it.
Oh, okay.
And then scroll down. So under that second one, under primary action, the second one, if you look at that code. So like that one doesn't have a button. So the second one has a button and is clickable.
Yeah, so I think you have. So I think you do card action area, and then you just need to add it on click. Is that what you did to the card action area?
No. So you have to add that on click to it too.
I think so, because like this is saying, notice like when you click on this, it's not doing anything.
Yeah.
Like it's rippling, but there's no action that it's taking.
Right.
So you just simply need to. So if you have this working, where you get the little the clicky thing, and then you get the ripple, then that's correct. It just doesn't know what to do. I think you probably just need to add an on click.
And then that on click would be the same as what is the on click on our button.
Exactly.
Okay. But I don't need to change the export default function thing at all from what ours is. That should be okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Cool.
Easy enough.
All right. Anything else?
I didn't have anything.
Okay. All right. All right. We got a lot to do next Saturday. and it'll be our last class. So I think we should start maybe a little earlier. Are you guys good with 9 a.m.?
That should be
Just
good.
remind us.
I will. Yeah, I will. I'll probably change it, but but yeah, we'll shoot for 9 a.m.
Are we gonna try to do that one in person or virtual too?
I think we should do that one in person.
Okay.
And that shouldn't be a problem next week. Cool. All right. I'll send a reminder and then we'll shoot for in person. I think we have a new location. I may try and have us do it there, so I'll send details about that too if possible, or if I can make that happen. It's close to where Tailwind is, and then we'll probably go till maybe noon, and I think that should be enough time to get everything in. Does that work for both of you?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. All right. Have a good week. I'll see you guys next week.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye.